Welcome to another edition of Anglican Unscripted. This is the French Cafe edition, episode 286. I'm Kevin Carlson.
I'm Gavin Ashenden from the back patio of Café Le Terrasson, Ville-de-l'Époelle. Please come and visit it. The patrons have given me their back bit to do this in, and we need to repay them.
Okay, as you can tell, Anglican Unscripted will go anywhere to film an episode, and obviously you were having a little bit more difficulty with your Wi-Fi. You said, I'm going to go get a baguette, I'm going to go get some tea, I'm going to go and get some cognac, and I'm going to run out, and we'll find Wi-Fi somewhere, and you managed to do that, Gavin.
Well, Kevin, I look bad enough in recording on most conditions, but to see myself frozen with my jaw hanging near the floor is really stretches my capacity for humidity further than it can easily go. So I've come to, it's been raining in Normandy for days now, and there's this really nice cafe in a nearby town, and I use their Wi-Fi when I come in, and I said, please, can I borrow your Wi-Fi? And they set me up in their back courtyard. I have supplies of beer, my pipe. I'm here for the afternoon. I may let my wife assume this took hours.
No, yeah, that's right. And I will confirm that you sat for me for 3 hours, and that it couldn't be helped. Yeah, couldn't be helped. All right. So since we last talked, a lot has happened in the world. Obviously, we had a meeting of Gaff Kanpai where they discussed what to do with the UK, And we've had a development here in a church called Trill, which has relationships with England and with Coventry Cathedral, where there's a peace initiative. And I kind of said, well, this is a good time to talk to Gavin about Justin Welby's initiative with the cathedral and how this is helping or not helping, and what really is the plan with the cathedral. So let's back up almost 6-7 years. Tell me how this kind of developed.
Well, we really have to back up to 1945, Kevin, much further. Because,
okay.
Because one of the terrible things that happened during the war was the wholesale bombing of cities, of the Germans by us and by us of the Germans. And Coventry was hit very badly because it was an industrial centre, and the cathedral was burnt to the ground. And so this cathedral was left as a burnt-out shell, and a new one was built beside it. I have to say the new one is not as beautiful as the old one, but there we are. And the dean originally had on the high altar engraved the words, "Father, forgive." And so this cathedral in Coventry stood as a very powerful image of the need for reconciliation between two Christian nations. And it set up, I think, a model, a paradigm for how Christians should look for reconciliation. But you have to set things in their context. The context of reconciliation, as it comes from Coventry, is of two parties who are both penitent and who are looking for the truth. The truth in this case is God's mutual forgiveness of each other before they can receive forgiveness of God. So it's set up already to pursue reconciliation within a gospel paradigm, and that's great. It's been very influential. And the nails from the medieval roof were melted down and have been recast as silver crosses, and the Archbishop of Canterbury for a long time wore one as a sign of his commitment to this centre. And he himself worked there as a canon for reconciliation. And his successor has been the amazing Canon Andrew White, the Vicar of Baghdad, who's done what he's done. So it's a very resonant place in England, in contemporary English spirituality. But it is being used as a model for reconciliation in entirely different contexts. So the critics of Justin Welby say, it's all very well to have reconciliation, but you can only have it on the basis of agreed gospel truth, which was the original paradigm in Germany. And you can't just take the idea of reconciliation and say, hey, why don't we be super nice to each other and get on and let bygones be bygones, and hey, wait, we're reconciled. It takes more than that. It takes repentance, and particularly it needs to be done within, I think, what we call the paradigms of the gospel. So Justin Welby has taken this reconciliation idea and expanded it. And I think the best explanation I've heard people use is it's become a kind of political reconciliation rather than a spiritual reconciliation. And so the aim is just to get people who didn't get along to get along. But if you're getting along without changing any of the underlying worldviews, you'll soon fall apart again. It will be cosmetic and a house built on sand. So it looks as though what's happened is this getting along idea, irrespective of any other criteria, has been imported into an ACNA parish and become the basis of the getting along between the ACNA parish and the Diocese of Virginia, without any respect to other allegiances, other more profound issues. That's how I see it.
So you're just basically explained it by saying that Coventry and this design for the peace and the relationship and getting along is designed more on the theology of John Lennon than Jesus Christ.
It started with Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
It's become John Lennon. That's very good. Yeah.
Oh, it's the only thing I could think of with half a cup of coffee in me.
There's a lovely phrase. Oscar Wilde heard somebody say something very clever, and he said, "Oh, I wished I'd thought of that." And somebody said, "You will, Oscar, you will." I wish I'd thought of that, Kevin. I will.
You will. So we're to this point now where there's influence from Coventry around the world through Justin Welby, and here in America we have Trill Church saying they can be at one, they can work with, support, in the same relationship with the Diocese of Virginia, whom they left years ago. They sued for the property, they lost, but they joined the ACNA. You don't see a future in a non-repentant relationship.
I think the difficulty is that it's exposing the old theological dilemma between truth and unity. Now, we find them both in the New Testament. And as with any theological argument, if you're determined to win the argument, you can find some verses that back you up, but you can only do it by ignoring or downgrading other verses. I think we're in an age and a culture which really likes John Lennon. It's very keen for people to get on in a world that is so badly fractured. But the Gospels are predicated on truth at so many levels. The incarnation is a profound truth. Jesus confronted people with truth all the time. Long before he put people together, he gave them the truth about what they were doing, their motives for doing it, and how far away they were from the alignment of God's mind. He gave them the truth first, and then they got to the unity. I think, without wanting to do any theological shortcuts, that has to be the theological pattern. That's not the pattern that we see coming out of Coventry. It's not what John Lennon practiced, and from what I've heard, it's not what's happening between this parish and the Diocese of East Virginia.
Okay, let's move on to different topics. Let's talk. There's a bit of noise. Can you tap your microphone?
Yes, I can. Okay.
I hear a bit of background noise. It's Skype trying to find any noise whatsoever, and audibly it expands upon what it hears. I think
what I can do, I can turn my microphone down while you're talking like that.
Well, or you can, if you go to the Skype setting in the future, go to the Skype setting and turn off the background noise adjustment thing. But it's not a big deal. As long as I'm talking, that shouldn't be a problem. Then people have to go, well, why is Kevin talking? Well, he's the co-host. I get to talk once in a while. Moving on to Gaff Kan. The Gaff Kan primates put out a communique, and once again, they addressed the problem in the UK, in England, and said, we're going to have to do something. We're actively working on a plan, and we know that we have very little time because of Scotland. Tell me what you think is going to happen in Scotland in the near future.
This is very difficult because the Gaff Kan communique was affected by the information that they were carried from England. And the fact is, the English theological culture is a very complex one. We are
Yes.
we. I think that English Anglicans are some of the most tribal people in the world. When you meet another clergyman, the first thing you do is you look him up in your online edition of Crockford's to see which theological college he trained at. We are appallingly tribal, and it's very much to our disadvantage. But what it means is that if you're going to try and begin a movement to mend or reconcile the church, it needs to take, so we're back to truth and unity again, it needs to be done on the reality of what kind of Christians people are, where they come from. Mm-hmm. So the Gaff communique has set out to deal with two problems which are right at the opposite ends of the ecclesial spectrum. So at one end you have AME, the Anglican mission in England. This is a very honourable and exciting church planting exercise. Its theology is more Diocese of Sydney in Australia than it is John Henry Newman. But, you know, it's WYSIWYG. What you get is what you see is what you get. On the other hand, the Scottish Episcopalians are from a very different Anglican tradition.
And you could say that for like the last 600 years, but go on.
Yes, you really could.
And they've never been real part of us.
What GAFCON have done, I think, is to use the event in Scotland, which is they're imminently about to pass laws in synod allowing gay marriage within the Episcopal Church in Scotland. They're using that event to as a catalyst to provide a bishop for the AMIE congregations. Now, with the rationale that if they do provide a bishop for AMIE congregations who are outside Justin Welby's jurisdiction, this bishop could also help out with the Scots if they needed him to. Well, it's not just the geographical distance between the AMIE congregations, who are mainly in the south of England, but it's also the theological difference. Bishops have to be, they have to be able to some extent act as theological chameleons. They need to be able to associate with the congregations they're pastoring and they're looking after and who come under their wing. It's one of the tricks of being a bishop. But to appoint somebody to bridge this particular ecclesial gap is actually asking, well, some of us here think it might be impossible. Now, maybe they'll come up with a really excellent candidate, and we'll say, of course, that's who they had in mind. Of course it's possible. Not only is it possible, it's a glorious triumph. And so they're asking some of us who are commentating to please wait before we weigh in with our opinions and our attitudes on the grounds we don't know enough, and we don't. However, we do know that what they're trying to do is really quite difficult. So we have to wait and see whether it can be done.
It's a completely different paradigm. Sorry, no words are affecting me at all today. Paradigm than it was for forming of the ACNA. Here we had a Bob Duncan who had relationships with all these dissident congregations and dioceses who have left or wanted to leave the Episcopal Church. And over time, he gathered these kittens together and got them to work together. Yeah, there's tension. It's not easy. And, you know, there's a lot of whispers under the currents and stuff like that. But it worked. Now, it's different over there in England because it's hard to gather those people who are affected by the workings of Rowan, Justin, and the last 600 years. There's a serious discontent, and you said it's territorial.
Well, it's going to be hard enough for GAFCON to provide a solution for people who exist outside GAFCON, and that's most people. It's even harder when you take, if you like, the extreme end of GAFCON and you pull your solution out of that. It just makes the stretch very wide. And you're right, what we really need is a Bob Duncan figure who can, the image I have is of a convoy of different ecclesial ships of different sizes and different speeds, but bound together in some kind of way. We need half a dozen Episcopal figures who cover the spectrum of Anglicanism, so that when a parish priest falls out with his bishop because he or she is adopting heterodox and even apostate values, Episcopal convoy found someone they can identify with and trust and say, you know, I'll give myself to that person for oversight. Now, knowing how complex English Anglicanism is, it really is essential that we find a spectrum of people. And it would be really wonderful if, for example, they came under the combined umbrella of Michael Nazir Ali and Greg Venables, both of whom are immensely respected in this country for what they do.
Absolutely.
and who cover just the kind of spectrum that I'm talking about. If under the sort of headship of these two men, half a dozen people could be found to represent the spectrum, then we have our Bob Duncan moment. We have the possibility of gathering people together of very different views, very different spiritualities and churchmanships, but who are determined to keep the orthodox faith. The solution that we have at the moment, it's too little, too late, to an extreme point, but I'm told, and this is really important, that not to leap to judgment because it's only the beginning of a process. Well, now, if the rest of the process addresses any of the issues I've discussed, we'll be very happy.
Yeah, I mean, and that's people. We're in a time in 2017 where churches shouldn't have to be faced with these issues. We shouldn't have to be going into England and replanting a church. We shouldn't have. I mean, England, the mother church, it should have held its faith and stood firm, but it didn't. And so I have a lot of pity and sympathy for Gaff Kan and its organizers because they shouldn't be put in this situation in the first place.
I couldn't agree more.
That being said, I think they're very creative people.
We just have to be very grateful for the people who stood up to be counted. And we do have to be very careful with our criticism. So I apologize already. Can I particularly apologize to my brother, Rod Thomas? I said last week.
I got a letter on that. We need to talk about that. I have done 285 episodes, of which I've gotten 3 complaint letters. One from the AMIA and Bishop Murphy. Obviously, they didn't like that. I got a phone call once from Archbishop Bob Duncan because I had said something that it wasn't within the plan. And so I got a talking to, and it worked out graciously. And I got a letter from a bishop in England who was not happy with you.
He's a wonderful man, but I used a phrase saying I thought he'd been neutered, and this has a whole series of overtones. It was pointed out to me that all he had done was commit himself to the present strategy and rules of the Church of England, but that's what I thought I meant when I said neutered. So what he wanted to remind me of is that his commitment to Jesus, to the gospel, and to Christ's church has not been neutered, and it hasn't. But it is also the case that if you take public responsibility within an organization that requires collegial responsibility, your freedom of action is somewhat circumscribed. Rob, will that do?
Well, that is the closing bell. I do want to thank you again for your time, Gavin. Please, a Konak on Anglican TV. I'd be glad to tip you for one. God bless, my friend.
Kevin, thank you very much. All good wishes from Normandy, and thank you for joining us.
Good. God bless.